Mr. Tom. This is our government presentation on the executive branch, the presidency. We had sections 5.1, 5.2, and 11.3. I'm Alyson.
Hello, and my name is Christian.
My name is Chris.
Hi, I'm Andy.
Hello, I am Queenie. Hello, I am Kino.
The first role of the president is the chief of state. The chief of state is the head of the government of the United States. They represent the dignity and majesty of the American people. In many countries, the chief of state reigns but does not rule. In the United States, the president rules and reigns. The second role of the president is the chief executive. The chief executive is given executive power by the Constitution. They are in charge of domestic and foreign affairs, making the American presidency one of the most powerful offices in the world. Because no one in the United States can be all-powerful, the president is subject to a system of checks and balances. Roles of the president. The third role of the president is the chief administrator. The chief administrator is the director of the entire executive branch. The president is head of one of the largest governmental machines in the world, so they employ about 2.7 million civilians to work for them. They manage the administration they employ. The fourth role of the president is the chief diplomat. The chief diplomat is the creator of the American foreign policy to the rest of the world. They let the world know what the United States policy is.
The fifth role of the president is chief legislator. What is chief legislator? The chief legislator is the author of public policies. They discuss with Congress the congressional agenda and what they want to happen and what laws they want to pass. Once in a while, Congress and the president will clash over certain policies. The sixth role of the president is commander-in-chief. The commander-in-chief directs the nation's armed forces. The 1.5 million men and women enlisted in the military are under the direct and immediate control of the president. They have dominant power over the armed forces and the policies. The seventh role of the president is the chief citizen. What is a chief citizen? The chief citizen is a representative of the people. They're expected to take high road and block out all the differences to represent the public's interest. They are supposed to agree with the personal interest of everyone they represent. The eighth and final role of the president is chief of party. The chief of party is the leader of their political party that controls the executive branch. Political parties are one of the most influential aspects when choosing a president.
Recently, a ninth role has been given to the president. That role is the chief economist. The chief economist's job is to keep an eye on the nation's economy and to step in and take effective action when problems arise. Another role they have to do is to balance the conflicting demands while maintaining a peaceful relationship with other nations/countries. For a person to run for presidency, there are some qualifications that must be met. The first qualification is American citizenship. To become a citizen, they must be naturally born in the United States. But by law, a person born abroad with American citizen parents can also be a citizen. They are granted citizenship, and they can still run for presidency, although it is greatly disputed. The second qualification for anyone that wants to run for presidency is the age limit. The Constitution states that you have to be at least 35 years or older to run for presidency. And the youngest president to be elected into office was John F. Kennedy at 43 years old. And the oldest president to be elected into office was Donald Trump at around 70 years old. While most presidents were mainly 50 years old when they resided in the White House.
The third and final qualification for anyone that wants to run for presidency is their residency. Any man or woman who wishes to run for president of the United States must be a resident of the United States for at least 14 years. These 14 years can be any 14 years in the person's life. When the framers first drafted the Constitution, they debated between a 4-year term with the president eligible for re-election or a 6 or 7-year term with the president not eligible for re-election. They settled on a 4-year term. A president may only win 2 terms consecutively. A 4-year term has been influenced by what Alexander Hamilton wrote in the Federalist. He stated that 4 years is a long enough period for a president to gain experience, demonstrate their abilities, and establish stable policies. Until 1951, the Constitution placed no limit on the amount of terms a president can serve. Washington did not want to seek out more than 2 consecutive terms of his own, and the no third term tradition became an unwritten tradition. The 22nd Amendment was created after Franklin Roosevelt won a 3rd and 4th term in 1940 and 1944. This amendment was created to limit the amount of presidential terms. No president can be in office for more than 8 consecutive years unless they finish their predecessor's term and run for 2 terms of their own. Many presidents, such as Eisenhower, Reagan, and Truman, have called for the repealment of the 22nd Amendment because they believe it places a limit on people's right to decide who should be president. Several other presidents have urged for a single 6-year term, so the president will not have to worry about campaigning, but rather focus on the demands of office.
When the Constitution was first created, the Vice President's power was very limited. However, now, the Vice President can do much more. So what are the duties of the Vice President? The Vice President is also the President of the Senate. However, they can only be used as a tiebreaker during votes. The Vice President also questions presidential disability. This means that if the President is in a coma or is disabled, the Vice President will take over.
When Franklin Roosevelt suddenly died in 1945, Henry Truman had to step up with little information and training about the Cold War. To prevent this from happening again, the Vice President moved to the inner circle of the administration. Now the Vice President is more involved in the executive branch. Some have been able to sit in on meetings and advocate for legislation. What is the Electoral College? The Electoral College is a group of electors that are chosen by the people. Their purpose in the government is to act as a middleman between the people and the prospective president. After the people cast their votes for the president, the electors will consider the statistics and cast their votes on the president. There are 538 electors in the Electoral College, and in order for a presidential candidate to become the president, they would have to get at least 270 votes out of the 538 votes. If the candidate does not get at least 270 votes, the House of Representatives would have to deal with the voting. This happened in both 1800 and 1824. In this case, the state delegates each have 1 vote, and the presidential candidate will have to get at least 26 votes. There are 3 possible scenarios during the election. The first is that the winner of the popular votes is not guaranteed presidency. Even if the candidate gets the popular votes, they have the possibility of not getting all the electoral votes, because the votes that matter are the votes from the electorals, not from the people. It is an all or nothing system. The second is that the electors are not required to vote according to the popular votes. The third is that any election might have to be decided in the House of Representatives if the electors do not agree on a presidential candidate.
Solutions for the Electoral College system. There are 3 different plans that people have come up with as alternatives for the Electoral College system. The first one is the district plan, where people elect electors by district. These electors are the ones that will be in the Electoral College system. The second one is the proportional plan. This plan states that each presidential candidate will receive a share of each state's popular vote. For example, if a presidential candidate receives 60% of the popular vote in a state with 10 electors, then they will receive 6 of those 10 electors' votes. The third one is the National Popular Vote Plan. This plan is sponsored by many Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. It states that the presidential candidate who wins the national popular vote is awarded the electors' votes.
Thank you for watching our presentation. This includes our presentation on the executive branch about presidency.